Hello and welcome to Gravitas Wins Conversations. Today I have the pleasure of talking to Jinen, co-founder of DronaHQ, a low-code platform for building enterprise applications. We go deeper into how he started, what are the use cases, what are the success stories, what are the mistakes that people do when they are building enterprise applications with the LCNC, and much more. Hopefully, you will enjoy this conversation. Welcome to Gravitas Wins Conversation, Jinen. Thank you for joining me in this particular podcast interview.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Pleasure is mine.
Let's start with this, Jinen. What was the trigger point for starting DronaHQ, and what has been your experience so far?
Sure. So, Joseph, we are actually a 15-year-old company. And the trigger to start back in the day was very clear that, we were I was working with Wipro back in the day, and I did not really think of the future to be an IT services led organization as a future, neither for me nor I thought it's more aspirational to think product. So that was my start point to think what can we do in the space of software as a service or software products and things like that. So that was typically my start point. And it so happened that mobility was very new back in the day. So we picked up some areas around enterprise mobility and we got started in that space. And here we are, 14 years into from that point, right? We've been working in enterprise mobility from an application development perspective. We've been helping our customers build various take various initiatives around enterprise mobility within their organization. And in our evolution cycle, we reached where we are right now as a full-fledged low-code, no-code solution, or a low-code, no-code platform that we are today offering to our customers.
Can you talk to me a little more about DronaHQ as a low-code, no-code platform, in the sense that the spectrum is wide? There is Airtable, there is Bubble. So the spectrum is wide.
Sure.
Where does DronaHQ fits in, and what's the offering?
Sure thing. That's a very good question, actually, Joseph. So the way we look at the entire low-code, no-code as a spectrum, right? The entire market, probably, I would fit it into multiple segments, right? Say, let's call them as niche areas, right? So we have database as a service as one of the segments. This is where players like Airtable, QuickBase, these kind of players fit in. So what does that segment do? It allows you to quickly create record keeping applications, right? Imagine I just want to capture my leads, or I want to capture my land records, and so on and so forth. So they all classically fit into database as a service segment, and then you can create entire digital whatever journey that you would want to create around it, right? That's one. B is I would call BPM. Second niche that we see in the market for it is BPM. It's a very old stuff, but there are a lot of new players that they keep coming. But the idea is it's basically business process, engineering services, right? So again, you drag and drop, but you eventually create, say, stuff like some approval applications, for maybe leave approvals, expense approvals, and whatnot, right? So these are all BPM players. Then we have field force related services. So in the field force, let's assume you are a large organization who probably wants to do say inspection or anything to do enable the field force to go ahead and capture data from the market and push it back into maybe whichever is your core system of records, right? So there are field force solutions which exist in the market. There are players like Fulcrum and many other players, right? So those are sort of third segment. Now, typically the fourth segment that where we kind of play is application development tooling, right? So in the context of application development, the canvas is a bit more open, bit more wider, and you're looking at building applications for probably internal audience or external audience to an organization. Now, depending on your use case, either way is typically if you look at applications, generally the context is you look at 3-tiered architecture systems. So there is a presentation layer, there is a business logic, and there is a database layer. There are players who exist who do each of these 3 different services, or there are one players who exist who can do all of these combined today, right? So there are players maybe I would call them large players maybe OutSystems and Mendix of the world, who would kind of target the entire 3-tier architecture. And then there are players like us who would rather focus on one of those core aspects. So we focus on the presentation layer, the web engineering. Today you can drag and drop with DronaHQ, and you can create an entirely perfect web application for your either internal use. So we have three use cases that we go after. One being internal use cases, internal tools, be is customer facing applications. They can be customer portals, they can be customer journeys, and so on and so forth. And third use case, which is a very new recent addition to our tooling, is called as embeddable apps. So if within your product you want to build a new feature with the low code no code, you could go ahead and do that. So our spectrum is very much related to in and around web engineering layer, and this is where we give all the services, you can drag drop, create an entirely perfect UI, connect it to your all your 40 plus backend services or 20 plus market services like Salesforce or maybe HubSpot or Slack or many other services, and you can create a perfectly whatever application that you eventually looking for making, right, for either of these three use cases. So this
Fantastic.
is where we fit in the larger scheme of things.
Fantastic. Can you talk to me about some of the success stories where you have implemented this, whether it is internal tools or external tools, which you can talk about, and what has been the journey of implementation, so to speak?
Sure thing. So I might be talking a little bit about some of the customers, but without really naming them, right? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So great. So for example, one of our customers is one of the third largest bank, right? Say I'll take a case of say an Indian customer here, and the third largest bank in India. But the idea is the entire consumer banking division, they uses us, right? They uses DronaHQ to actually create all the digital journeys, right, for their branch banking officers, anybody within the branch, so that they can go ahead and they can do their operations better, right? Now these could be these could be applications, some of the applications that you might want to see. Their compliance applications for either say the RBI or the income tax compliances and so on and so forth, right? Or they could be applications merely helping them to unlock stuff like say digital locker or any of the registers that you might see at the branch and they might want to digitize, right? So these kind of use cases that they would do. The whole idea is in the premise of the investment is in a traditional mechanism they could have done X applications. Today they are able to do X plus 50% applications, right? So the whole idea is 1.5 times the applications if they can build with this investment. That is the rationale for adoption of a platform like this. Similarly, I'll give you one more case study or a success story, right? We work with one of the largest in the food and confectionery business, right? One of the largest companies based out of the US, and we work with them across 30 different markets, right? We use LCNC, low code, no code, typically for the entire sales enablement channel. So, in which, we are dealing with a workforce of around 40,000 people across spanning 30 different markets, right? Including Latin America, Mexico, some parts of the Europe, US, China, India, and a lot of other East Asia countries, right? And today they have been able to build at least 16 to 20 different applications only and only to do everything around Salesforce, Salesforce enablement, enabling their end users, enabling the Salesforce to come on board quicker, to enable them to give them certain tools so that they can do business better or they can get onboarded faster, etc. These kind of use cases. So these have been largely some of the very large enterprise success stories. But having said this, we have tons of customers, over 100 plus mid-market customers, right? And today, they have been able to discover us. They've been able to get started self-serve, with us and build a ton of applications. And many a times we wouldn't even know what they are building, right? But we know they are customers since a long time because they have been subscribed to our services for a longer time.
Okay. Jinen, traditionally, or rather even now, these large enterprises, so to speak, the third largest bank or the other example that he gave, traditionally when they want to roll out certain application internally, their choices has been build or buy. Correct. So if it's a Salesforce, maybe HubSpot or a Salesforce application, and then internal, there would be other SaaS applications that will be available. Or they will go and say, okay, you know what, we'll either build it internally or we will outsource it outside.
Right.
What are the reasons that these guys are going for low code, no code nowadays? Is it going to the market faster? Is it iteration? Why are they choosing low code, no code?
So sure, I think it's a very, very good question, right? So Joseph, if you understand, most of these customers, right, build or buy is an option when there is a market service which is available. Typically, when a market service is available, it is a no-brainer that they would go and buy it from the market because it's far more easier than to create something from scratch. Correct. But if you understand, maybe, there are custom applications that they really need to build because there is nothing which is market look alike, which is available matching their needs, right? I'll give an example. A large financial services company based in Europe, for example, their problem statement was they wanted to do entire talent management in a very, very specific manner. They run success factors with them, but yet they could not really leverage it. Now, if they really wanted to build a very custom, talent management tool for the internal use case, whatever that is, right? Either they build or they don't build, right? Now the option was not there not to build, so they had to build. The choices were either do it with traditional approach or do it 10x faster with the LCNC, and they ended up building it with an LCNC. So LCNC comes as and when there is a need for custom applications arises in the company, and that is where, when there is a need and the use cases are probably fitting into the LCNC corridor, you might not want to go from point A to point B walking if there is a car which is available, right? So that's the whole point. If the road is there and the car is there available, you might want to choose a car. But obviously, if the roads are like streets of Mumbai, maybe you might just want to rethink, right? So that is where we are.
Okay, that's a good analogy, Jinen. Okay, so say for example, I'm the CIO of a bank or maybe even a CTO of the bank. I'm considering I have this particular need and there is no direct fit in the market. My needs are very custom, very specific. I want to build something.
Right.
What factors should I consider to even consider some of the LCNC tools, and also to compare? As you said, there's a spectrum of applications that are available. I could go for Airtable to just store all the records to the presentation layer that you are talking about, right? So there's a ton of tools that are available. What factors should I consider to go and say, one, this should be built in low code, no code. Two, this is the tool that I should choose. How should I go about doing it?
Sure. So let's talk about the choices, right? So let's assume you're building a, first, let's say the genre of your application, right? The genre of your application is, let's assume you're looking at building a core business application. Let's assume you're an insurance company and you want to build your, your entire LOS, right? Or you want to build, you're a financial services company, you want to build your LOS or some lending systems or whatever, right? Or you need banking, core banking systems. You would not want to build it with an LCNC. That's the first rule of thumb. Core business application, I don't think you should attempt. The reason being, no matter what, you might be buying the best of the breed, best in class technology, LCNC, you might want to have better control onto the code. Having said this, you can still think about going hybrid, Joseph, over there. You might think, partial part I would want to build it using this, and some part I would like to do it in this way, right? So as to cut your cost, cut your time, increase your go to market, whatever. So that's one part of the thing. Now coming back, right, there are a plethora of internal applications that you might want to build, or you might want to build an extended enterprise facing use case. Let's assume you are an e-commerce company and you want to build something for your merchants. You are looking at those sort of use cases, LCNC is a great fit. Reason being, you are not really gung-ho about your UI UX. Second, you can really scale these applications because these are not going to be customer facing, but these are going to be more or less internal facing applications at some point in time, right? So your demand on these compute demand is always going to be sizable demand. It's not going to be like peaking or whatever, right? So there is not really you can really plan these applications very well, right? B, these applications typically now, these are candidate for LCNC, right? Now let's look at these applications. Some of these applications typically, when in the context of large enterprise, you might say they already have system of records 90% of the time prevalent, right? Unless there is a net new greenfield application that you're looking at, generally the case is that system of records exist, right? Depending on maturity of the company, obviously. But most of the times, the kind of companies that we are dealing with, they will have system of records, which means now they might also have an entire microservice layer on top, which is built. APIs are there, databases are there existing. What is missing is probably UI modernization or the legacy modernization that they're trying to attempt. Classic fitment use case for a product like DronaHQ. Because here you're talking about not really straight away writing a new presentation layer, making it more modern, making it more agile and stuff like that, right, Joseph? So this is where I think choices of platform players like us would come in. However, at the same time, let's assume if it's a internal facing application, but yet a green field, maybe you might want to you want to touch upon the entire stack and you want to do low code, no code. You might want to choose some of these other players, right? And let's assume you want to choose. Let's assume it's a simple, some digital thing that you are trying to do for say visitor management, very basic applications which are not going to be the records are not going to be scaling so high. Then you could go for a database service players like say Airtable. The biggest problem with going with somebody like an Airtable for a serious business application is soon you will outgrow those databases. Soon those databases will start outperforming and you need to do some various other things. Small and medium companies, it's okay. Your data size, the number of records will not really grow say that drastically. But let's assume we are operating at a scale of a Walmart. I would suggest rethink. Don't really look at say Airtable or Quickbase or any of them as your fundamental choice, right? For building a database application. Now coming back, right? So from that perspective, but let's assume if you're looking at building something like say an automation services, right? So again, there are plethora of players available. Go for them. There are niche players which are available, right? So depending on your use case, I would rather suggest you should think about it. But the rule of thumb, just to summarize, is it a core business application or is it a internal facing tool or an extended enterprise facing tool, right? If it is a latter, then I would suggest go for LCNC.
Okay, I think now that the entire cloud development is moving into a headless movement, Mac and headless, I think you are placed really nicely on that internal facing presentation layer. All the other things at the back end is available. The system of records is available. You are sitting at the top where the internal team can experiment with some kind of a user interactions and everything. Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you talked about the system of records is in the customer's application stack. Right. You are sitting on the presentation layer. What about compliances? GDPR, HIPAA, I mean, there is a ton of compliances.
Right.
How do you take care of that?
So, Joseph, DronaHQ today is available in 2 versions. Rather, we are one of the very rare platforms which is available on cloud, but we are 5-minute installs. You can self-host the entire service, right? So, let's assume you want to become a HIPAA compliant. You are trying to build a HIPAA compliant application on top. You go with a self-hosted mechanism of DronaHQ so that it stays everything within your firewalls and your setup and your infrastructure. However, if you're looking at going yet for let's assume you are okay with the cloud and stuff like that. Our cloud today, as on day, is a SOC 2 compliant. It is a GDPR compliant service. So you can use our cloud service for that, right? However, I'll be very candid over here. A lot of our financial services customers today, they opt for self-hosted version because the compliances that kind of exist with this.
Okay, fair point. If it's a self-hosted, how do you do the updates? And also, what's the pricing model for the cloud versus self-hosted? How does it work?
So today, our cloud-hosted version and self-hosted version are look-alike prices.
Okay.
Right? That's not going to be the case probably from a quarter from now, because I think the rationale is we would want to incentivize, or rather we want to pass the benefit back to the self-hosted version customers. So this is the direction in which we will be heading. So from a pricing standpoint, you will see that self-hosted version will kind of from our licensing perspective might be tad bit will save you a bit more. However, the downside to that is you need to maintain your revenue cheaper.
Mm.
But however, but it also gives you a lot more control because your data stays with you and everything. So while there is a downside on you adding to your maintenance, etc. But at the same time, it is also in your favor. At the same time, right? Today our installs are say 5-minute Dockerize install, Joseph, which means you can actually set it up within your hyperscaler of your choice, GCP, AWS, wherever. So it goes into your standard contracted. Let's assume you're already standard contracted that your farm is going to be maintained by some XYZ player. It's just additional of say maybe 2 or 3 additional nodes, right? So it won't really be a much of a challenge over there. Just to
Fantastic. So you're giving quite a lot of options to the customers. They can pick and choose however you want.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, so which is a fair point. How is your pricing done? Is it per usage? Is it on headcount? Is it on revenue?
Sure. So I think we have been very innovative with our pricing mechanism and the way in which we license the product, right, to our customers. And this comes with a very deeper understanding of our customers, to be very honest, right? Today we are one of the very, very few players, rather I would say the only player who give pricing or licensing on the basis of 3 different parameters. Right? We do it today, we offer our customers licensing basis usage,
okay,
which is amount of usage that you're going to do, and we can license you on it. Imagine you are a Walmart and you want to give it to 200,000 people enterprise-wide access, but only a fraction of people are going to use it, right? So again, you can go with the usage-based mechanism, and you can actually get started with a plan which is going to be not really looking at running into millions of dollars, but yet where you can really start, right? That's A. We also give you user-based plans, right? And the third is we are also coming out in the process of even giving you app-based pricing. So the whole idea is licensing today is a scheme of multiple things. There are at least 7-8 different parameters over which we can tweak it to make it more value-based pricing for our customers.
Fantastic. There's a quite a lot of option, whether it is on the installation based or on the pricing based. Good to hear, Jinen.
Yes.
You would have seen a lot of rollouts of these applications. In this, what mistakes normally people do, the enterprises do, and how can they avoid them?
When they roll out their applications or when they're building their applications?
Building the applications.
Yeah, okay. So typically, many a time when I see business when they take the charge of getting an application done, I think in my experience, what I've seen is they come out with a very, very large thing, right? And that needs more time to deliver. You cannot go agile with that, and so on and so forth. Business being business, they need everything. Right? But if at all you put some rationality to it, and if you can cut down everything into small chunks and get it up and running, and go in the direction of MVP, I think businesses could have had a better shot at getting something they want, and they can keep iteratively progressing towards what they really need. Right? That is one thing I think during the build process. If they're smarter, they will be able to achieve a lot more with an LCNC.
Okay.
Right? And I can back this up with an example, right? We have customers wherein they have started with a simple record capturing application, and today they've built a full-fledged application on top, right? So I'll give you CRM as an example. They started as simple because they did not really want a Salesforce because it's way too complex. But they started building it with a very simple use case. Today they have maybe around all the major features that probably a CRM might need, but very contextualized to that customer, right? You can create invoice at the click of a button. You can send a subscription order at a click of a button. You can make a call to your customer at the end of and this is completely based on LCNC.
Fantastic. And also the benefit is the application, whatever that they are developing, can grow with the company.
Absolutely, because your day 1 need versus your day 100 need is going to be very different. And I'll give you, we also one of the active segments that we work in is with the fast growing internet companies, right? Typically they are Series A, Series B, Series C startups, right? Who are working in the internet domain, right? They can be an e-commerce company, fintech company, blah blah blah, right? Now, what I see is as in when they charter, it only keeps enlarging with it. Today, for example, they are on completely online shop. Tomorrow, they might have an offline presence. In the case of an offline presence, they need 20 different tools. It can be an audit tool, it can be a distribution tool, it could be anything else, right? Now, this is where an LCNC really comes in handy because it allows them to do things at the speed of light.
Fantastic. Yes, absolutely. I agree with you on that. Jinen, Indian IT industry is largely built on software development. And you also mentioned, for 14 years or 14 years back, you started off with this. Do you think low code, no code as a tool, not just the DronaHQ, but the whole movement itself, is a disruptive force for the Indian IT industry? Where do you see that they should move forward?
I think no. To be honest, it's whenever something comes up, right, you only move up the value chain.
Yeah.
So in the context of say let's assume what DronaHQ does today, right? Let's assume you're dragging and dropping and you're dropping a radio box. You're essentially eliminating the the mundane task or the repetitive work of writing a small two line of code on probably how a radio button would have otherwise be written in HTML, added some CSS on top, etc. Right? Now, if the tool is doing for you, you as an engineer or the IT engineer within India, there are a plethora of chances or opportunities which will exist in the AI/ML technology. You might want to move up and you might want to do something more hardcore on maybe on the operating system or maybe on the embedded engineering side of things. So none of those opportunities are going away. Also, in the context of business application, there are some fairly, I would say, core business applications that will continue to thrive and you might want to go. And today, LCNC, when I say the reason we are calling it as low code is because you could do it to 80% of the work without coding, but 20% you still have. So the IT folks within, say, India or probably anywhere in the world, the low code, no code movement is not going to go ahead and take away their those jobs, right? They are absolutely needed. Today, I can't really ask a business person to come and make an application. Very honestly, we've been into, say, low code, no code since last 4.5 years, right? Moment we give it to the business, they cannot even think schema. Right? They cannot think systems the way the systems are to be thought. This is where engineers would come in and they will be required. Just that they need to have better tools.
Correct.
Right? Just because an IKEA exists doesn't mean carpenters don't.
Great perspective. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Jinen, you touched upon this AI/ML, and then it reminds me, is there a play of ChatGPT in the LCNC? Do you see it? Do you work on it? Or you?
Absolutely, Joseph. We just launched a new feature yesterday that you can just tell the system hey, this is a table. From this table, we need so and so things, and the ChatGPT will actually write a query. And not just there, Joseph. We just also launched another thing wherein you said, hey, here's the data that this particular API is giving me. I want to transform it in a manner that it will give me in an array of objects. ChatGPT, which is integrated or embedded within the LCNC, is actually making an entire JavaScript and giving it for you to test and then probably do it. It will reduce your time of doing all of these things by gazillion hours, right? And this is what embedding in LCNC is allowing our customers to now. They will allow our customers now to actually go to market even faster. Yes.
Yeah. Jinen, we have covered a ton of grounds here. In closing, what are you most excited about and what are you most worried about?
It's a great question. I'm most excited about the future of LCNC as a category in general. I'm a great, I've read books like Crossing the Chasm in my growing up days, right? I'm a big believer of some technologies are hype technologies. Some will probably just fizzle out. But I feel LCNC is going to stay in the market. I am seeing the proof of the pudding every day, right? There are customers who are working with us since last several years. And I can see as and when they'll start enjoying the merit of it, they would want more and more applications to be built on top of LCNC. So the future of LCNC is extremely bright. Consolidation will happen in the space at some point in time, right? But having said this, there's a long tail of applications that will continue to remain absolutely relevant to LCNC, right? So that's one thing I'm extremely excited about. The thing that probably on the worry side, I think I don't think there is anything which is kind of worrying me at this point in time. I only see a extremely bright future, Joseph. So maybe if I have something, I'll definitely get back to you, and you can edit it into your
Uh,
into your program.
or we can have another session.
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Jinen, finally, I ask three rapid fire question to all my guests.
Sure.
The first one being, what's the kindest thing anyone has done for you?
There are a lot of good things,
Yes.
but one thing that probably should come to my mind is, we were working with one of our customers in the government PSU, and the person was so amazing that they came out with an opportunity on how do we really navigate within the organization and how do we really do things right. And I did not really expect that to happen within maybe a government or a PSU organizations. I found it extremely kind.
Thank you. As I said, this podcast is about leadership. In that sense, what do you think as the best leadership quality, and who manifested in your circle, in your life?
So in one of my early days, right, when I was working with one of my customer Wipro, so one of the things that I really learned from them on the leadership side of how they have been able to really empower their team, and direction is one thing, vision is one thing, but at the end of the day, how do you really take the entire team to go ahead and deliver it, and the pride in making sure team is actually coming up and delivering these things, right? That's something which is extremely important, right? So in the context of leadership, I think I really found those things really moving. But just to also touch upon, right, I'm a big fan of Tata's, right, and how they've built not just Tata's, but they have they've been also instrumental in building of the country in general, right? I myself, I have been I have been had the honor of taking a Ratan Tata scholarship at some point in time in my career during my engineering days. So one of the things is how do you really give back to the society, and this is what leadership probably should be all about. If at all you can really empower people to a larger cause, to a larger commitment. This is probably
Awesome answer. Thank you. Finally, Jinen, what's your definition of living a good life?
I think a balanced life, which is probably you're working, but you're also having your fun part of your life, family life, your sports life. Today, fortunately, I do 5 days a week. I have active sporting in my life. Extreme happiness, spending time with my daughter, with my family, etc. Right, and of course, besides that, hustling in the LCNC space. So yes,
it shows up, Jinen. In your conversation. Jinen, I'm sure you are extremely busy. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about LCNC and your journey in DronaHQ. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Thanks so much for having me. I love the conversation with you. Looking forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed our conversations. If so, can I request you to share this podcast with others? And also, can you review and rate on the Apple Podcast and other social media platforms as well? Thank you. Have a life of wins.